Good evening to you. We're live in Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine. We're just about 20 miles or so from the Russian border, just over there. Air raid sirens have been going on, off and periodically through the afternoon and into the evening. We are well within the range of long-range rockets and missiles from the Russian side. And I should say that behind me is a whole city, but you can't see it because we're in curfew and people are obviously trying to conserve energy in the middle of this war. Well, this is a day when Presidents Biden and Putin gave competing views on the war here. President Biden, who was, of course, here in Ukraine yesterday, he gave a big speech in Poland where he said that the West's support for Ukraine was unwavering and that the country stands proud and tall. But in his State of the Nation address before the Russian parliament, Vladimir Putin blamed the West for the conflict. He said they had stoked this war, they are actually perpetuating it, and he also made it clear that Russia was suspending its participation in the last major nuclear arms control agreement with the United States. Well, tonight we'll have reports and analysis for you from Warsaw, from Kiev, Beijing too, on China's possible role in the conflict. But we start with our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, on the first big speech of today from Vladimir Putin.
The world, according to Vladimir Putin, feels like a parallel universe. Who started the war in Ukraine? Not Russia, he says.
Responsibility for fueling the Ukrainian conflict, for its escalation and for the growing number of victims lies fully with the West, and of course with the regime in Kyiv. I wish to repeat, they started the war. We are using force to stop it.
But it was Russia that invaded Ukraine. Western military aid has helped Kiev resist. It hasn't forced the Kremlin, though, to de-escalate. Today, President Putin suspended Russia's participation in the last remaining nuclear arms control treaty with America, an agreement that limits nuclear arsenals and provides for missile inspections. No longer topical, says the Kremlin.
We know that the West has directly helped Kyiv to launch strikes on air bases where our strategic nuclear bombers are located. Now they want to carry out inspections of our military sites. In light of today's confrontation, that is absurd.
Support here, but unpicking that treaty risks a nuclear arms race.
In order to avoid nuclear war, it's better to have a framework. But losing this framework, we are witnessing the real threat of a nuclear war.
Washington says the Kremlin's decision to halt participation in the nuclear treaty is deeply unfortunate and irresponsible. The BBC wasn't allowed to attend the Kremlin leader's big speech. Journalists from what Russia calls unfriendly countries were not sent an invitation. But after watching President Putin on TV, this is what struck me most about him. His special military operation has not gone at all according to plan. But regret, there was no hint of that, and no sign at all that Putin is looking for an off-ramp. Instead of compromise, he favours confrontation. And this audience loved it. Mind you, the president here was preaching to the converted. All main Russian TV channels carried the speech live. From these images alone, you'd never know things had gone badly wrong for Russia on the battlefield.
Russia will respond to any challenge we face, because we are one country, one people. We believe in ourselves, in our strength. Truth is on our side.
After 1 year of war, the Kremlin is still managing to persuade most Russians to believe that. Well, today, Vladimir Putin was addressing the political elite, MPs, senators, regional governors. Tomorrow, he's expected to take part in a giant, highly choreographed rally At a sports stadium, we're told that 200,000 people will attend. The Kremlin's aim is to show that the president is popular and that his special operation is popular too.
Steve, thank you. Steve Rosenberg there live in Moscow for us. Well, America rejected Vladimir Putin's claims as absurd today. President Biden delivered his own speech in Poland, and he described the war that's going on here as a battle for democracy. Well, our North America editor, Sarah Smith, is travelling with the president, and she sent us this report from Warsaw.
In front of the blue and yellow Ukrainian colours, President Biden came here to project American might and to pledge to use it to protect Ukraine, democracy and freedom.
When Russia invaded, it wasn't just Ukraine being tested. The whole world faced a test for the ages. Europe was being tested. America was being tested. NATO was being tested. All democracies are being tested. And the questions we faced were as simple as they were profound. Would we respond, or would we look the other way? We know the answer. We did respond. We would be strong. We would be united. And the world would not look the other way. And Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. Never.
This is a direct appeal to NATO allies as well as to the American people to keep up their commitment to Ukraine, even if this conflict could last for years to come. Refuting Vladimir Putin's assertion that the US provoked this war, he spoke directly to the Russian people.
The United States and the nations of Europe do not seek to control or destroy Russia. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. And millions of Russian citizens who only want to live in peace with their neighbors are not the enemy.
Earlier today, Mr. Biden met Polish President Andrzej Duda. This display of solidarity is to demonstrate America's guarantee of Poland's security and his promise to defend every inch of NATO territory. But they want more than that. Poland backs Ukraine's demands for F-16 fighter jets. The US is not ready to send planes yet, but that could change.
That we will keep standing up for these same things, no matter what.
With public support for the war slipping in America, the president made a direct appeal to Americans' fundamental values and the need to fight for them.
Freedom. Stand with us. We will stand with you. Let us move forward with faith and conviction, and with an abiding commitment to be allies, not of darkness but of light, not of oppression but of liberation, not of captivity but, yes, of freedom. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops, and may God bless the heroes of Ukraine.
Proud that Mr. Putin's expectations of a weak and divided West have been met with a firm united front against his war, President Biden's biggest task now is trying to keep his allies as committed as he is for as long as it takes. Mr. Biden declared that Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, as he said that the decisions made over the next 5 years will shape our lives for decades to come. He believes that this battle in Ukraine will shape the global world order for a generation, and that's the pitch he's making to his allies to stay. They have to stay the course in Ukraine.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. Sarah Smith, our North America editor, travelling with President Biden in Warsaw there. Well, the Chinese government has expressed concern and alarm that the conflict here could spiral out of control. President Xi is due to outline his country's plans for the conflict little later on this week. Our China correspondent Steve McDonnell is in Beijing for us now. Stephen, what's your assessment of China's possible role in the war here?
Well, China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang issued this rather ominous warning that Beijing believes that the conflict in Ukraine could spin out of control if certain countries keep pouring fuel onto the fire. Now, he didn't mention the US, but that's who he's accusing of pouring on the fuel. The Chinese government has accused Washington of prolonging the conflict in Ukraine. Mind you, it never says war or invasion lest it offends Russia. But now you've got Washington saying it's China which could be doing this if it starts supplying arms and ammunition for Russia's war effort. Beijing says it's neutral, but in North America, researchers say this country has already been supplying this dual-use equipment, gear that could be used to fix fighter jets or jamming equipment. Later this week, Xi Jinping will be making a speech and apparently calling for a negotiated peace in Ukraine. But if the war keeps going, if Vladimir Putin is facing a humiliating defeat on the battlefield, it's unclear what the government here might consider doing.
Sure, fascinating. Okay, Steve, thank you. Stephen McDonald there, live in Beijing. We're going to take stock now on where things stand this evening on the battlefield. So just take a look at this map that we've got for you. It shows Ukraine, and as of this evening, the areas in red are under Russian control, and the land held or regained by Ukraine is in purple. So you've got a bit of a sense of what's going on there. Let's get a final word from our international editor, Jeremy Bowen. Jeremy, you're live in Kiev as we approach the one-year anniversary on Friday. Simple question, really, but a complicated answer, I suspect. Who's winning?
Well, it's very starkly laid out right now. I'd say that you could say that the Ukrainians have been winning because everybody expected them to fold in the first couple of weeks, and they very much have not done that. However, despite the fact the Russian army has been written off by its enemies, they've said its logistics are rotten, its command is awful, its men are demoralized, they do human wave attacks and thousands get killed. The fact is, it is still fighting, it is still grinding on, and that will continue, I think. So I think people should not write that force off at all. So, is there a chance of negotiation? No. That's because both sides, the Ukrainians and the Russians, believe the only way they're going to get through this is to beat the other, to win on the battlefield. So, does that mean that that might happen quite soon? Not the way things are at the moment. No, certainly not. We might be here a year from now, talking about the second anniversary of the fighting that's going on. The sides have starkly laid out their positions. The Russians, this very ideological idea that the West is out to get them, and President Zelensky as well has said he wants every inch of Ukraine back. So that's very stark, and Biden and the West have laid out their position as well, that they believe it is worth the sacrifices, the military commitment, the economic damage to continue supporting Ukraine. And the last thing, the Ukrainians themselves, what do they want? More weapons, better weapons, longer range missiles, and those warplanes, which even if they practically can't get here quickly, it's a commitment that they're after.
Indeed. Okay, Jeremy, thank you. Jeremy Bowen, our international editor, live in Kiev there. Much more analysis from our teams on the ground here, online, of course, and there's a special edition of Ukrainecast, which you can catch on BBC Sounds. But from all of us here in Kharkiv, in northeastern Ukraine, it's back to you, Rita, in the studio.
Thank you.